welcome back to part 2 of the adoption series. So this particular video is going to be about college struggles with adoption. I feel like I went to college and that's when I realized, oh, I'm really affected by being adopted. This is not as unaffecting, if that's a word, as I thought it was. I really thought that I was normal and I didn't have any problems and I didn't have any shortcomings and I was all the way together. And then I got to college and I just realized so many different things. And to be honest with you, it was frustrating because you go to college to figure out who you are. And of course, there's always this statement, in order to know who you are and where you're going, you need to know where you're coming from. And I think that's where things started to fall apart for me. I don't really know what my origin is. I don't know where I came from. I don't know those people. There's not really a lot of assistance in like me really trying to get a clear, straight answer with that. And just to give you guys some background, like, first and foremost, I had a closed adoption. Adoptions are most often closed, especially around that time, because they think that it is better to protect the adolescent, the baby, and also to protect the parent. And so some of it has to do with, like, you know, some parents give their children up for adoption and they don't necessarily want to be reminded of such a hard task for them. Also, I guess they do the same for babies, just, you know, what if this kid becomes Barack Obama or something like that, right? And now here comes their parent, oh, that's my child, let me go find my child, you know. It's kind of like a out of sight, out of mind thing. I don't agree with that. And honestly, like, I would go back and forth as a kid, like, whether I wanted to meet my biological parents. Actually, at one point, I actually said, oh, I'd love for my biological mother to be there for my high school graduation. By the time I got to high school graduation, I didn't care. And by the time I got to college, I think I had been exposed to some kind of show on TV where the mother was, the children or somebody in the family was looking for either looking for the parent or looking for the child. And so they'd probably been adopted or been in foster care or something like that. And so there was like this door. And so if they did intend to meet the person that was seeking them out, then they were behind the door. Otherwise they weren't. And so I think that scarred me. I don't really want to go looking for somebody and then all of a sudden now you don't even want to be bothered with me, deal with me, blah, blah, blah. I'm cool on that. We good on that. I don't need that kind of heartbreak. But the first thing I realized when I went to college in relation to being adopted is like the lack of family support that I had. Now, in general, remember that whole village that I was talking about as a kid? They were all like still rooting for me, but I think the strong presence that I had from them when I was like a baby, 2, 3, 4, 10, that kind of thing, still very young and being nurtured, was very strong. But by that time, you know, it was more so like, we know you'll do great, we're so proud of you, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I also, like, don't want to negate whatever kind of effort they made. Like, you know, people made sure I had everything I needed for college. People gave me money and that kind of thing. But the ability to call me and check on me, the ability to just be there and constantly pouring support in me, I didn't have that in large numbers. And to be honest with you, I think in a certain way, you know, I became the strong friend or the strong child. Oh, she got this. She ain't got nothing to worry about. This girl, she's used to being successful, so this is normal for her. But I don't think people really realize, like, when you leave and you go someplace else and you realize everybody else got all these aunts that call them and check on them, uncles, cousins, all these different people. And then I also started to notice family for me meant something totally different from other people, because like where I have a godmother that was like an integral part of my life, a lot of people's godmother like fell off, I guess, or godparents fell off at some point. And then even like people that I call my cousins are not really my cousins, people I call my aunts not really my aunts, you know, that kind of thing. And so when we start to explain these things and people say, oh, that's your mom's sister? No, it's not my mom's sister, it's my mama friend, you know, things like that. So I just started to notice a lot of these differences. They were magnified. Family relationships, the lack of them were magnified for me. I really did struggle with realizing that, like, I don't have somebody to call on just immediately outside of my mom if I want to spend some money on something that might not necessarily be the necessities, right? Like, I only have a few people that I can call with that. And so when you're limited in those kinds of resources, like, you kind of got to make sure that you take your time with that kind of stuff. Because if I call my sister this week, I can't call her next week. And then my mama was consistently giving me money in a certain interval, and so I did not call her for nothing else outside of that. So, and it's not about money though, it's really about effort. Like, I would have some of my friends, like their families would just come visit them on Saturday and take them to lunch and stuff like that. Like, I never had that. And just the dynamics of like how my family was set up. And here's the crazier part. My mom's family, they were closer to me when I was in college than I was living with my mom every day. So I actually think that some of that had a lot to do with it being like a letdown for me, because I assumed that they would be a lot more present, a lot more supportive, and somebody that I could count on, and they just weren't the way that I needed them to. And that's no shade, no tea to them, but that's just the truth of what my experience was. And then I also started to learn, figure out, and realize that I was coming into my own. And so I did grow up with an older mom. So just to give you like numerical value of what I mean by old, my mother adopted me when she was 42. So by the time I was in college, she was about 60 or something like that. So we're talking about generational differences. She actually attended the Claflin University, as I did as well. And so when she attended, it was very different. There were a lot of different rules and regulations. There were a lot of things they couldn't do because of the times that we were able to do. A lot of freedom that she didn't have that college students in general had. So she had a hard time adapting to that. She also had a hard time adapting to the fact that like, I will do whatever I want and you don't really have control over it. And I started to realize, like, in order to maneuver my relationship with my mom the way I need to, less is more. And I went through the strong phase of detachment in college. Like, I even started to get super detached from my friends and super detached from people that were super close to me. And it was because I was realizing, like, that difference thing was getting real strong and heavy on me. Just really realizing differences, realizing how different I am, realizing that maybe I don't like that, maybe I don't want to do that, or maybe this is what I want to do. Or just realizing that, like, you know, I've always been the girl that pretty much, I was the good girl. I had the good girl persona going on. I did everything right. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't take a whole lot of risk. And I wanted to dive into that. I wanted to take risk. I wanted to be risky. I wanted to be the good girl when it came to getting the things that I needed to get done and making sure my responsibilities are taken care of. But outside of that, like, I want to live. I want to live my life. I don't want to have restrictions. I don't want people that are going to limit what I think, say, feel, do, or can be. And I just started to like, and don't get me wrong, it was an invisible detachment. So people didn't really realize that I was doing it. So you could imagine how much more difficult that made it. Like, I obviously still spoke to the people that I needed to speak to on a daily basis. I just would get in my feelings. It would just be this funk that would be so hard to get out of. And it was just something that I just had to deal with. It happens a lot. It's not something that I'm like completely removed from, but what I started to realize is, if I have a disagreement with you, if we have a problem, I'm gonna cut you off. I will detach you from my life in a second. I'm not about to go back and forth with people anymore. And as an adult, it's actually easier for me to do it, but I think it's because I understand that I had to create boundaries and I had to make the experience one that's conducive and comfortable for my existence. And now they want to cut the grass right by the door while I'm trying to record this. Anyway, another thing that I observed happened while I was in college. So my sister and I, you know, we had a really good relationship. I mean, it was as good as it could be. However, so she's a year older than me. So she actually went to college a year before I did. And so college is kind of like the indicator that I use that kind of, I don't want to say separated us, but it kind of pushed us further apart. You know, she was in college. She has a different lifestyle. She has a lot more freedom than I do. And so our time frames and schedules and things were just so different that it would be so hard for us to communicate. Y'all, we communicated through email. And like now, it's funny to me, but I know that at one point, like around that time, so this is like 2007, 2008, we were all big on Yahoo emails and sending like them, I guess they like just now, like videos and stuff like that. that was just something that we would do. And so what I will say is I appreciated the fact that our relationship was able to transition into every phase of our life and adapt where it needed to. And so because it was hard for us to text, and we never really spoke on the phone a whole lot, it was hard for us to get each other through text message, but we at least knew through email we would always be connected. And I just thought that was so dope that we were really able to do that. But I think like the college transition is where our relationship transitioned to, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just think like it was easier for us to kind of me go over here and do my thing, she go over here and do her thing, because we lived in our own worlds. All we did was give each other the invitation into their life for a little while. And so that was something that was kind of hard for me, because I think like we had a good relationship, and her going off to college first, it really didn't even affect me. I didn't even realize that like we were beginning to distance until I went to college, and then I realized how much time I didn't have, and then I was able to understand like the differences between that. And because you know we didn't grow up in the same house, so we didn't have that I gotta talk to you every day bond. And actually like we don't always talk all the time right now, but we do try to stay consistent. But it's just one of those things, it's like one of those struggles of when you grow up adopted and then you have the option to actually establish relationships with your biological family. It is so easy to drift off. It is so easy to you know, still be connected, but then still be distant at the same time. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Like maybe I'll do that as an episode, just so like I can really talk about that. But I want to obviously have that conversation with her first and make sure she's comfortable with it, because I don't want to be talking about my relationship with my sister to you guys, and I haven't really made sure, hey, this is what I want to talk about. I want to make sure you're cool with this. I don't want you to feel any kind of way. You know, this is all coming from a genuine place. So whatever it is, I'm gonna have that conversation first before we talk about that. The strongest struggle for me in college is the feeling of realizing that no one can relate. I actually only have, outside of my biological sister, one other friend that's adopted. And so she really probably hasn't really tapped into some of the nuances of adoption and the implications of it on your life the same way that I have. And so because of that, I really realized that like I was walking through life experiencing this thing on my own, and it was a struggle. It was not something that I had people in my corner. Even when I was able to have conversations with people, you know, the conversations can only go so far. They can only understand to a certain extent. It's just a struggle when you're dealing with something and you don't have that commonality with at least one person. Because even with my sister and I, you know, we didn't grow up in the same household. Our experiences are different. We also are different kinds of people in relation to how we like internalize and process certain things. So that was a harsh reality for me to really realize that I am really doing this thing by myself. I am really in a place where I have no one to relate to. And to be honest with you, like, in college, I went through a lot of days feeling alone, and nobody really knew that. And so this is me just being open and transparent about it. I wasn't necessarily depressed. I just think it was the realization that like, Jess, at some point in this lifetime, the only person you got is you, and you gonna have to depend on you, trust you, count on you, and push you more than anybody else ever will. And it was empowering for me, but it was hard because I felt like, dang, like, why would you put me up for adoption to have me? And so I started to blame my biological mother for a lot of these struggles. So let me just like keep that even more real. Why would you put me up for adoption to say you don't want me to be out here trying to fend for myself, but then to certain instances I start to feel alone? Now I'm sure a lot of you are like, well, why didn't you have this conversation with your mom? So another thing as an adopted child for me, I never wanted to bring her things that were some kind of reaction or emotion connected to being adopted and make her feel any level of guilt, because none of it is her fault. And I know that, you know, the action of her adopting me was a blessing. It was something that she did out the kindness of her heart. And I guess I always felt like that would be a burden for her, and it shouldn't be a burden that she has to bear. The burden that she's had to bear is my life, and that should be enough. Also, I just, like, no shade, no tea to my mom, I don't feel like she's well equipped to really have that conversation. Now, sidebar, I feel like there should be laws in place that whenever a child is adopted, the parents and the children both go to counseling for different reasons. The parent needs to be assimilated to the lifestyle of raising an adopted child, the child just needs to talk through their feelings. I grew up in a household, you know, a black household, so if I even started a sentence with I feel like you ain't got no feelings in this house, the only person that got feelings is in this house is the person that paid bills. And I know that, you know, that's just a disciplinary thing that black communities have cultivated as ideal in relation to checking your child. I don't feel like there was any ill intent. I don't even really think my mom even realizes what that means or communicates to me. But to be honest with you, that taught me to kind of like conceal my feelings and emotions, and I think that's why in a lot of ways I am this like cut and dry kind of person. I don't really have a whole lot of emotions about certain things, and I struggle with being emotionally supportive sometimes because I don't know what to do with that, because I was never taught how to deal with my emotions because of that. And you know, my mom wasn't necessarily raised by someone that taught her to do that as well. But I'll tell you this, college is where I tapped into my feelings, and it was a frustrating phase of life for me because I wasn't taught how to deal with them. So a special shout out to all the people I went to college with. If I had ever tell you off, try to fight you, been mean, and you just been mean and nasty, I'm sorry. I was not the person that I am right now, and that was not fair to you. And really, I'll take it further. If I was mean, nasty, ugly, whatever to you at any point in life, prior to that point, and even after that, my bad, y'all, because like, you know, you just really don't understand how your experiences translate to the way that you interact with people, and I wasn't mature enough to separate the two. And to be honest with you, I still struggle today with the way I feel is how I interact with people, and it has nothing to do with them, and that's a selfish thing that I'm working on, hence the fact I, you know, take all these necessary precautions to make me better. But yeah, that was my experience growing up. And because I guess I compiled the growing, I added some pieces to growing up and my college experience as an adopted child. That wraps up this particular part of the series, and I hope that you guys stay tuned for the other ones that are soon to come. Bye. Thank you so much for watching.